Welcome back, friends. This is Rev Sarah here, having a conversation with DeeAnne McClenahan about all of the various things she does. Not all of them, actually, because that would be too long of a post. We're going to focus in on her job as the financial analyst for Valley Unitarian Universalist and some of the work she's done around understanding how our budget works and what it is your pledge actually pays for. So, DeeAnne, I wondered if you wanted to just start by telling us, like, what the financial analyst does.
Sure. Well, I will start by saying that most churches call it the treasurer. Somehow we use the financial analyst word, but if you can think about what a treasurer does, that's basically it. But at VUU, it's sort of a part board, part finance committee, part liaison job. And so my main jobs are really to help the folks on the board and the folks on the finance committee understand the financials a little bit easier because not everybody's an accountant and understands balance sheets and so on. So I help people understand them. And then I also answer a lot of questions and I prepare a report every month, which we actually just started linking in the happenings this week. So now it's accessible to everybody, which I love. Um, and that report just kind of summarizes how did the month go, what does the year look like, where are we at, and that's what the board uses to make their bigger decisions. And so I prepare it, the finance committee approves it, then we send it to the board and now to the congregation. So that's the biggest part.
That sounds like a lot of work. How much time does it take for you to prepare that information each month?
It, yeah, it doesn't take all that long. I spend a lot of time, I guess, working with our financials, so I know them well enough. It's pretty easy for me. I think, once a month it takes me an hour and a half or so to prepare that report, and then I spend an hour with the finance team and maybe a part of an hour with the board.
Excellent. I know in some congregations, one of the hard things is to find who the next treasurer or financial analyst is going to be. Did you get some training before you took this job on? And is there anybody who's been asking you to maybe shadow what you're doing, or would that be something that somebody could do if they wanted to learn more about this job?
Yeah, I would love to have somebody shadow me. I've actually been on the finance team and or the board for probably 10 years. So I was on finance for several years before I was ever the treasurer. I've held that role a couple different times. When I was on the board, other people held that role. Um, I'd say that, one of the hardest things to find is really somebody who has an accounting background. Because one of the pieces that's most difficult with a lay congregation managing finances is really understanding not just income statements and balance sheets, but also how ours work because we're not, we don't use generally accepted accounting principles. Although I guess generally we do, but there are a lot of things that apply to a church and to our church that are kind of handled on the books differently. So learning that takes a little time. Yeah, so anybody who's got some kind of accounting background and an interest in the congregation would be a perfect candidate to work with me in the finance team and take on this role one day.
Oh, well, I hope somebody hears this and thinks that sounds juicy and fun
Yeah.
because I know it's one of those areas that if you know you don't want to do it, you know you don't want to do it. I know the board that I serve on, people are like, no, that one's not for me. They're
Yeah.
willing to do a lot of other roles, but that one has some specific skill sets with it that I think some folks shy away from. So 10 years experience with our board and our finance. What do you want to tell us that you've learned over this last 10 years? And what do you think we've learned as an organization in terms of how we manage our money and what our money pays for?
Well, a couple highlights, I guess, are that we have really good money managers here. We work hard to steward the money carefully, and we have been through a lot of ups and downs. But most recently, COVID, for example, there are churches like ours who shut down, who ceased to be during this time. And we were in the middle of a capital campaign when COVID hit. We lost our minister like the day after COVID hit. We lost our, administrator, our music director. We lost a lot. And the fact that we stayed together and were able to thrive during those years was a real testament to the people here and their commitment, and also to that financial management, because we sort of made a big shift from doing a much larger capital campaign to a smaller sanctuary transformation. And we also took some of that money, and the congregation agreed to put it aside to help us get out of the COVID years. And so we're about to go into our third year using those funds, and it's our last year. So we had the government pandemic funds, and then we had some of our own, and we're climbing out about like we planned, not quite, exactly where we hope to be, um, but it's just, it's an amazing group to work with, and we don't all agree on how money should be spent, and we don't all agree on how to record things, but we together figure it out and make it happen.
Yeah, I'd say that mirrors what I've experienced of y'all just in the year and a half I've been here, which is that you have a lot of continuity of systems and a lot of practices that are sort of best practices for managing money, and making sure that you have money set aside for different situations. I know we've had some things come up. When I first got here, there was some unexpected costs around air conditioners and that kind of thing that kind of put some dents in our money. Tell us a little bit about how we've handled some of those emergency situations or emergent needs, and how that's impacted our sort of future as we move forward.
Sure. Well, I can remember not too many years ago, pre-pandemic, we had a flood, and the cost to repair that flood was $15,000, and we frankly had no idea where we were going to get that money. And so I believe we ended up getting it from special funds, but the upshot of that was we all took a harder look at having cash reserves, and we worked really hard to over the next several years to build those up. We got them built up to a nice level. This last couple of years, we've had to dig into them a little bit. So we're the good news is we didn't run out of cash, right? Because at that time around the flood, we were like, how are we going to pay the payroll? And this time we're not quite there. It's hard, but it's doable because we've socked away some money. We're also working on a reserve fund. Some of the remaining money from the STT is going in a long-term reserve fund, because when air conditioners go, they need to be fixed. And we can't, look to fundraising. We have to have that money somewhere. So, we've replaced about, I don't know, 15 air conditioners in the last couple of years. So we're going to be good on air conditioners for a while. And we've got a new roof in the education building, and we have a 10-year-old roof on the sanctuary. So a lot of things are stable, so we have a chance to kind of build that money up and be ready for the next thing. This year, what we had to do about some of those air conditioners that weren't covered in the STT plan was to use our budgeted money that was set aside for other things and sort of reallocate. And that's your job, is reallocating funds within the budget. And so we've gotten to a much better place in the last 6 months in kind of spending less over here so we can make up for that deficit.
So one of the things I was hoping you could help shed some light on for me, because as a new person to this system, every congregation has its unique way of doing different things, and the way that we do pledging and budget. is very different from other places I've been. Do you want to share a little bit about that sort of that system and the calendar that it follows and kind of what the thinking behind that is?
Yeah. So it was probably 6 years ago or so that we talked about this a lot, and we decided to make a change because the church calendar year, or sorry, the church fiscal year is a July to June year. And so that's common with churches. It's like a school year. We trade ministers in the summer. Used to be congregations shut down in the summer. So that's kind of the beginning, we come back in August and September.
I call it a
So
program year. Yeah.
yeah, the program year. So that's how we budget is for that year. What the reason and we used to do our pledge drive based on that year. But what happened was we were trying to present a budget in May or June to the congregation, and we would start trying to raise money in February, March. We would by May or June, we didn't have a really clear number yet always. And so it was always kind of a panic. I know it seems like a lot of time, but it's really not. So what we did is, and the other problem we had is that people had a hard time keeping track of their pledges because as individuals, we budget on a calendar year. We get our raises often in January. We get our tax refunds in February. We do our contributions in December. So we decided to make the pledge year the calendar year, and that way, and we would start fundraising in November, try to have it wrapped up by January or February, because then the budget team could take that number and work on their budget from February to April, present it to the congregation, and then get it approved. And so that's been the theory. Now, I'm not going to tell you we don't still talk about it because, like this year, we didn't get around to fundraising in November, frankly. And when we do that budget, by the way, it's a calendar year um, pledge. So, but we're budgeting for the second half of that calendar year and the first half of the next one. So, what we do when we calculate the budget is we say, okay, this is what people pledged for this year. They're going to pay half of it at the end of this year. And going into next year, they're going to pay a little more. So we are really good and so methodical about projecting our pledges. It's we're I just can't even express how good we are at that. Like, and when we get to the end of the year and our contribution income is almost exactly what we projected almost every time. So we've been really happy with it. I've been really happy with the process. I think it's a great process. I'd love to see it stay in place, but I'm only one person.
Understood. Well, I think it makes a little better sense to me now. I always see the challenge being that we want to have an aspirational budget for the next program year, and it's hard to know in November what changes and additions we might want to make for the next year. So I think there's some complexity around figuring out what that's going to look like so soon in the current program year to be planning for the
Mhm.
next program year budget wise. So that's I found that as a new person in your system, that was a challenge for me to wrap my head around. I
Yeah.
think the other challenge, of course, is getting folks in a place where they're ready to do a stewardship campaign at that time of year. And this year we just didn't have people in place to do it. So our request had been for folks to just kind of maintain the pledge that they currently had while we prepared hopefully an aspirational budget that helps people see where we're headed. One of the hardest things last year is we did have to make some cuts. They weren't super deep, but they certainly impacted some of the places we were able to spend money, some of the things we
Mhm.
were able to spend money on. And I think we're hoping that this next year we will be able to put money back where we took it from this year and maybe have some places where we increase as well. Some of that's around our commitments to organizations we partner with and do work with. Some of that's around making sure staff gets, you know, cost of living increases.
Right.
And some of that's just around making sure we have enough money for professional development and that the committees have money to spend on the things that they want to do. So there's lots of little pieces. Um, but the biggest part of our budget is pretty much staff and building, right? I mean, when we're talking about what are we
It is.
spending our money on, the big picture of what we spend our money on is having staff in place to help lead and work with in shared ministry what this congregation does. Is there anything more you want to say to us about what we spend our money on and what our pledges go to support?
Well, I think I would just agree with you there. The staffing is the biggest piece of our budget, and that means that programs are the biggest piece of our budget. The thing that ends up being cut are the things like a professional development budget, or $200 for this committee or $2,000 for that committee. Those are the more flexible things, and they just don't go very far. And we've cut them back so far, like you said last year, and we can't sustain that. And so um the idea of cutting staff or not giving staff fair pay for the work that they do are both very hard pills to swallow. And so, at the end of the day, the answer is um, that our members make VUU a priority in their annual budgeting. And I will just say that we have not been as good as we could be about the ask. And especially, when we have new members joining us, and who maybe haven't been with a congregation and don't understand what it costs to run a congregation. I mean, we our budget is like $2,000 a head, per person for members. Now we get contributions from non-members and we get rent and other things, but we do not have a small budget, and so it's a big ask.
Yeah, and I know that for some folks, $2,000 isn't a whole lot, and they're able to give a lot more. And for some of us, that's a big stretch, and we might not be able to give even half of that. And so there's also this balancing out of everybody giving what they have to give, and hoping that that kind of all
Mhm.
pulls together in a particular way. And things
Yeah,
change. I mean, we might have one year. I know I've had some years where I could give more, and other years where I had to pull back based on what was happening in my family or in the economy and that sort of thing. So I know all of us, I guess the invitation is for all of us to look into our budgets and see, how important is this congregation in your life?
yeah,
How big a difference do you see us making in the community around us? And, what do you have available to commit to that? It's funny, I was listening,
yeah,
NPR does such a good job of doing their regular little campaigns for giving money. And uh, one of the people said, well, you give money, and they named all these like channels and stuff channels and apps that we give like regular money to,
yeah,
and isn't this worth more money to you, or at least the same kind of commitment? And I think that's what I'm hoping for this year, is that folks will really take a good look at the really amazing work that we're doing, both internally in terms of taking care of each other, and externally in terms of being involved in the community in some really, I think, life-changing ways, both for us and for the folks that we work with. um, I don't know. It seems like Chandler and even the Phoenix Metro would be a different place if we weren't here. And I don't know that it
yeah.
would be, I don't think it would be a better place.
Yeah. Well, I want to say a couple of things about giving. One is I've been a young broke single person, and I've been a young mother with children that are, expensive, and I've had a number of years that I couldn't give as much as I wanted to, um but I always felt like if I made a commitment, and sometimes it was, $10 a week, or but making the commitment to make a regular payment, because our bills are the same every month. Like, we don't, our income drops in the summer, but our bills do not drop. The AC gets very expensive. Um, So making a regular commitment is super important, not just to the church, but also I think it was to me to feel like I was a part of something, even if I was a small part of it, you know. And then, we all get older and we all have more money and our kids go away from, they get out of college and we can afford to give more. And I will say, as a parent of two grown, amazing children, that my children would not be who they are. You know them, the things that they do and the way that they influence this world. And they would not be the kids they are, the adults, 30-year-old adults they are, without Unitarian Universalism in their blood. And so I, give in part now in gratitude for that. And just thanks for everything VUU did to raise my children. And I want to be there for the next people.
Amen. Yeah, I really feel that too, DeeAnne. I mean, I have a kid who's about to graduate from college and one who's in high school, and I definitely can already see the seeds of who they are being connected to the communities, the UU communities that helped raise them and helped orient them around what it is to be a human and to be human with other humans and to be on a planet that needs our care, all of those things. I think
Yeah.
that's really true. And I've had a couple interviews with folks who've talked about the work that they're doing in faith formation and also the work they're doing, say, like with the Immigration Action Team or with nonprofits that we do work with. And in some cases, those folks are doing that work also with their kids. And
Right.
it's making a difference in how their kids see their responsibility to the community around them. They see that, their parents are taking an interest in immigrants' lives or in the lives of folks who don't have housing and making real relationships with them and doing things that make a difference in just everyday small ways and also big impactful ways. So
Yeah.
yeah, I'm with you. Like there's a difference that we make both in the kids that we're raising and also in how we raise ourselves and
Yeah.
being able to live our values together. I think that that's boy, I mean, whatever I have to give towards that cause, I'm going to give because I don't
Yeah.
see a whole lot of other things in the community around me that have that kind of return on investment
No.
because
No.
it's
And it's kind of
relational.
it may be kind of sappy, but my grown kids and what they do make me want to be a better person, a better Unitarian. And what my gifts are, money and finances and organizing things and running meetings. And so I do those things so that other people can go do the activism and the, climate change protests and all the things that they do best, right? I do all these things in the background, knowing that and giving my money to this organization because it supports all of those things. So I don't have to give my money to 18 different, places. I give my money and my time to basically to one place, and they go out and do all the things that I care about.
Amen. Same. Well, the theme for this year is stone soup. And this idea that we're going to put what are we making soup out of? We're going to put a stone in, and of course, then everybody comes and puts in the ingredients that they want to put in. And I think that's a really important reminder that we all have something to contribute,
Right?
and whatever that is, we're inviting you to bring it. And we are also inviting you to bring some ingredients to our stone soup next weekend, but that's a whole nother conversation. Well, I really appreciate you taking the time, DeeAnne. I know it's a really busy time for somebody who works with taxes. So kudos to you, and I hope you get through this season and have a very nice vacation planned on the other side.
Thank you. I do have a nice vacation planned, and I will get back to work now. Thanks for
Excellent.
having me.
Thank you so much. Bye.
Bye bye.
Hi, this is Reverend Sarah Oglesby-Dunegan, the Senior Settled Minister at Valley Unitarian Universalist Congregation. We're inviting you to sustain our community through new financial contributions, continued financial support, and increasing your financial support if you're able to do so. We need about $90,000 more in pledge income from last year's budget to support our continued work in this congregation. Maybe you've never pledged before. You can make a monthly, quarterly, biannual or annual contribution through your own bank account or through our website. This is a lot how we support other member organizations in our community. But in this case, we have about 300 members and another 150 or so friends who participate in our community. And we currently have less than 200 pledging units, families or households that make a pledge. What does this mean to you and your community? How much do you value the work this congregation does in the larger Phoenix metro area? With your contributions, we can make sure the Valley UU is still here for future generations that need a faith community that offers all the things that Valley offers. Excellent youth faith formation that prepares kids to live in a pluralistic community with respect for a wide range of beliefs and practices, grounded by a moral compass built from compassion, inquiry, accountability, and integrity. We also have adult faith formation that has a commitment to social justice and service alongside spiritual and intellectual development. We participate in interfaith community organizing, and we have worship that is engaging, renewing, and inspiring. We have a lot of mutual aid and care that holds us through all of life's challenges and celebrations. Valley UU is a healthy, interdependent community that values your contributions. Thanks for adding your special ingredients that nourish and sustain this community. May we find there is abundance where abundance is needed.